Well, welcome back to Open Line, everybody. We are talking about term limits, congressional term limits here in Tennessee and across the country. What are the chances that'll happen? We are talking with the Knox County Mayor, Glenn Jacobs. He's chair of Tennessee for Congressional Term Limits. And I'm encouraging people to call in. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Mike. Hello, Mike.
Hello. Good evening, Ben, and good evening to the mayor of Knox County.
Hey, Mike.
The problem I have, when people used to mention term limits, my answer would be, well, we have term limits, and that's going to vote to the ballot box. But when you have people who don't vote, it comes to a point where you have to have term limits. The way I see it, and this gets to the base point, I always felt like at this point we need to have some type of fine for those who don't vote, as like the IRS. If you're late for filing your taxes, you get fined. And we need to also have a dedicated time off to allow for people to vote so there's no excuse. First of all, when you look at Senator Jesse Helms of South Carolina, that senator was nearly 100 years old when he was still in the chamber. Literally, they had to almost bring him in with paramedics and an ambulance almost every day. That's how bad off he was. Staffers had to read bills for him. He was that debilitated, as you would be at 100 years old. It wasn't too long after he finally stepped down that he died. We can't have things like that. That's just ridiculous. And once people are in there, like the mayor said, an incumbent has a lot of power. They've made a lot of connections. They've networked with so many different corporations, different lobbying groups, and they have that upper hand. And also, like our state, we went from a billionaire governor to a millionaire governor. And as long as we have people with a load of cash, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. And at that point, I say there's no other option but to have a term limit. Like I hope Marsha Blackburn would have one term. That would be perfect with me. But we do need to have term limits. And I think it's something that's definitely open for discussion.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Mike, thanks for your call. So he has a lot to say there. What do you think about what Mike has to say?
Well, I think the most pertinent point for me was reaffirming that, just the power of the incumbency and the relationships that are built, the name recognition. You're in the media all the time. You're on the news just all the time. So you have these built-in advantages as an incumbent that are extremely hard to overcome as someone that's trying to unseat that person. So those things make it extremely difficult. And yes, I mean, we can talk about elections, and I agree, that elections are elections are a form of term limits, but it's extremely difficult in many cases. It's almost not fair, the advantages that an incumbent has in an election.
When you're talking about term limits, what are you talking about for a member of Congress and for a member of the U.S. Senate? What are we talking about?
Yeah, and that's what the Article 5 convention would discuss, is what exactly that looks like. For instance, to me, if I were a delegate, I've never been approached about that, so this is just Glenn's opinion. It would be serving a total of 6 terms in the House and 2 terms in the Senate. So you could actually serve 12 years in the House and you could serve 12 years in the Senate. But when we see people that are there for decades, that's just a really long time. But as far as what the structure and the actual substance of a constitutional amendment would look like, that's what this convention would be for, is to work that out among the state delegates.
Interesting. Okay, let's go to Joe. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
Hello, Joe. What's on your mind?
Hi. I was going to say, I'm not sure if this is exactly what about term limits, but in ancient Greece, the senators couldn't vote on anything without the people's approval that they represented. Nowadays, we got senators up there can get bought off by a huge corporation and vote in a way that people don't even know what they're voting about or anything. And if we could do something like that, I believe that would eliminate the corruption right there, people being bought off and things. But anyway, that's all I had to say.
All right. I'm not totally sure about that, but he's wanting more democracy. He feels like as a cynical sort of, I mean, it's again, Congress is bought and paid for by big corporate interests. I mean, that's kind of the sense. I don't know how you, I guess, what do you think about what Joe's expressing here?
Well, in a nation of our size, direct democracy of that kind would be extremely difficult, of course. And we are, we're a representative republic, we're a democratic republic, which means that the democratic process is we basically instill our confidence in a representative and they vote for us. So I certainly understand not feeling that Congress does not represent the people. I think in many cases we all feel like that. But I think going back to term limits, again, when we look at the relationships that happen over a long period of time, so much of the power in Washington, D.C., in Congress resides in the committees. It resides in seniority. It resides in how long you've been there. So for my friends on the right, they have Speaker of the House that they don't like. She's been there forever. That's why she's Speaker of the House. My friends on the right have folks in the Senate that are in very powerful positions. They're in those very powerful positions because they've been there so long. And it does feel like if you were in Washington, D.C. for that period of time, you're almost living in a bubble where your constituents become less and less important, and the people you spend most of your time with, or the people in Washington, become more and more important. So I think that a direct democracy of that kind is not really feasible in a nation of our size, but term limits can certainly help compel our representatives to be more representative of what we believe.
We have current lawmakers in Tennessee. We have current 2 U.S. senators and several Congress people. Are there some that support this idea? Are you aware of some that do support it?
Yes, absolutely. And there's a website that you can go to learn more about U.S. term limits. That's termlimits.com. But in Tennessee, my congressman, Congressman Tim Burchett, there's a pledge that the Congress can take. They've signed the pledge. I think Bill Haggerty signed the pledge. Marsha Blackburn has signed the pledge. And then around the state, I know that other Congress people, House representatives have also signed a pledge. So yes, I think that the idea is actually pretty popular among our congressional delegation here in Tennessee.
And as you said, it's popular among the voters, and so it seems like they could put pressure on the Congress people to move this along. And so,
well, I think that's one thing that people can do. Well, yeah, I am, and I think that's one of the things that I would really like to see is candidates making a pledge to sign the pledge for term limits. I think that would help everyone.
It's almost depressing, though, in a way. It's almost like, everyone is saying, I mean, you take that last caller, Joe, like very cynical, corporate interests control Congress right now. And I mean, Joe, it's not like he's in a bottle there. There are plenty of people that would maybe say those same sort of things. And yet again, our same people keep getting reelected. So there's this enormous frustration with Congress, and yet individual incumbents keep getting reelected. And so it's almost like the system is not working. We don't, why can't we make it work? Why can't we, there is a chance for term limits every 2 years if it's somebody in Congress, and every 6 years if it's somebody in the U.S. Senate. And it seems like it should work. If people are that frustrated, they should be able to go to the polls and exercise their right.
Well, again, I think that so much of it is because incumbents wield such massive power in elections. When someone is able, because they're elected official and they're on the news almost every night. Name recognition plays such a huge role in all of this. When they've built the relationships, that's extremely difficult to overcome. When I was running for office, there was no way, even at a local level, that I would have run against an incumbent, because it just is incredibly hard. And incredibly hard to beat someone that has been there for any length of time. And it gets even more so at the congressional level. So no, I think unfortunately, the system is broken. And so much of it has to, we talk about the money in politics, and sadly, I don't see any way to get the money out of politics. And I wish there was. But so long as all that money is there, so long as the influence is there, it's very hard for someone from the outside to be able to come in and to beat an incumbent.
All right, very good. We are talking term limits with the Knox County Mayor, Glenn Jacobs. We will take a break. Come back, take more calls. If you want to call in, there's the number, 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. We'll be back right after this.